Though you might not realize it, the ground beneath your feet could be littered with historical riches, waiting to be rediscovered. For one group of London city workers, finding lost and buried relics of the past beneath busy city streets was all part of the job. Yet, after a new project led them to dig alongside one of history's most storied rivers, the workers stumbled upon an ancient secret that left them in awe. They'd never seen anything like it. Workers find ancient treasure that could change Britain's past. For centuries, the River Thames has played a prominent role in English life. Those that first settled beside the river used it as a source of food and transportation, and later, the Thames was held as a prominent fixture in tribal religion. Rivers were often considered sacred in the early days of man, and the Thames was no exception. Alternatively named the Isis after the Egyptian goddess of motherhood and health, the Thames regularly drew worshippers looking to pay tribute to the gods of its shores. During the Bronze Age, worshippers often tossed valuables into the Thames to appease the deities they were praying to. Weapons, jewelry, and currency were all cast into the river to bring good fortune upon their tribes. As civilization advanced, so did the Thames's role in society. The river served as a waterway for trade and exploration, a resource for industry, and even a leisure spot for boaters and swimmers. But as the industrial age reached its peak in the early 19th century, the Thames became a dumping ground for chemical runoff, garbage, and even human waste. Yet where most saw a dirty, trash-strewn river, others saw opportunity. Young boys known as mudlarks began scavenging the shores in search of items to sell, which were usually things like discarded silverware or old pottery. Yet every so often, relics of the Bronze Age would turn up in the muddy waters and bring these boys a nice payday. The Thames has since been cleared of this pollution, and most present-day mudlarks believe that the Bronze Age relics that once washed ashore were lost to time. But in late 2019, one discovery flipped this theory completely on its head. In preparation for a new quarry project, a group of city workers were dispatched to the London borough of Havering to clear the area of any valuable artifacts. This was simply protocol, however, as the city was convinced the workers would come away empty-handed. But as soon as their shovels hit dirt, the workers struck gold or, rather, bronze. The excavation had revealed 4 separate deposits of Bronze Age artifacts, each one more impressive than the next. In total, the workers pulled 453 individual relics from the cache, including swords, knives, axes, spearheads and daggers. Non-weapons such as bracelets, woodworking tools, and metal ingots were also recovered. It's incredibly rare to have uncovered 4 separate hoards of such size on one site, said Roy Stevenson of the Museum of London, as most large deposits are often found in isolation rather than in groups. This discovery is of huge importance due to the deliberate placement of each deposit, Stevenson continued, and raises questions as to why this treasure was buried in this way and why it was never recovered. Several theories were put forth about the origins of the Havering hoard, which was dated between 900 and 800 BCE. One researcher posited that the goods were buried there as an offering, much in the same way they were once tossed into the waters of the Thames. Others suggested the opposite. That the hoard was deposited in a ritual closing of a temple built alongside the river. This theory was somewhat supported by the fact that most of the weapons were broken when discovered. Yet this fact could just support a more obvious claim. That the hoard was nothing more than a garbage dump. When early tribes abandoned bronze tools and weapons in favor of harder steel, they simply could have buried the goods to keep them out of reach. It is guesswork pretty much as to the intentions, curator Kate Sumnall told The Guardian. We have got the evidence, we will be putting forward our best theory. But we can never definitively know. Whatever the reason for its placement, the hoard provided valuable information about the state of travel and trade during the Bronze Age. The axes were traced back to mainland Europe, meaning whoever deposited them had at least had contact with tribes a great distance away. Our site is not a little isolated site, explained Sumnall. It is part of a bigger European connection, with a lot of trade, a lot of movement, a lot of communication of ideas and also of goods as well. After all the items were catalogued, the Havering hoard officially clocked in as the largest ever found in London and the 3rd largest in the United Kingdom. The Staffordshire hoard, discovered in 2009 and containing over 3,500 relics, remains Britain's most significant find. Today, the Havering hoard can be found on display at the Havering Museum in Romford, England. This find made archaeologists eager to search for similar treasure troves, and some appeared in the most unlikely of places like one man's home. Luke Irwin, a famed floor covering and rug designer, had no idea his Wiltshire, England, home was hiding a critical historical artifact. There had been no evidence of anything ancient until workers were digging for electrical wiring on his property. Luke was sitting inside his home when he heard a worker shout, seemingly in shock. The rug designer ran outside to see what the commotion was about, only to be met with a worker holding a pickaxe in the air and looking curiously into a hole in the ground. In February 2015, while laying electricity cables so my children could play ping pong in an old barn, we struck a cold, hard surface, the designer explained. Thankfully, workers noticed a bright colors peeking out of the ground just before shattering whatever it was with a pickaxe. Upon further inspection, it was a tiled mosaic boasting bright blues, oranges, and creams. While everyone else scratched their heads, the strange find had Luke thinking of another oddity on his property. There was a bizarre trough located near his property's main house, which his contractor asked about. No one knew how long it had been there, so the designer didn't think much of it at first. But after finding the mosaic, this property was special. Experts looked at the mosaic 18 inches underground and concluded it was a Roman mosaic floor from approximately the 4th century, preserved for years by the chilly English countryside. As he learned more details, Luke became even more incredulous. The Roman mosaic was once in a luxurious estate, the Deverell Villa, which existed from 175 to 220 AD. It really goes to show how all empires stand and fall, Luke said. The ancient site was far more advanced than experts expected. There was running water and heat in this villa, Luke explained to Architectural Digest. That hadn't existed in the 1,600 years after that. With answers slowly trickling in, he revisited the odd trough on his property. What was it? Luke had an archaeologist visit his property, who confirmed that the trough was actually a Roman child's coffin. Clearly Luke was unknowingly living on land rich in ancient history. He felt both foolish and invigorated. What this sort of thing throws out to you is a level of your own ignorance. I knew what this thing was, but I had no idea the date of it or the quality, Luke said. The more Luke learned about the mosaic's backstory, the more he wanted to honor it. After discovering the ancient beauty, it didn't leave Luke's mind. In fact, he thought about the mysterious mosaic floor for 6 weeks, trying to calculate how to use it as inspiration for his own floor designs. I designed floors for the 20th century, and here's a decorated floor from the 4th century. The conclusion I came to is that you cannot spit in the eyes of the gods when such a gift is given to you, Luke explained, excitement taking over him. With the tesserae, aka the tiny square tiles from the mosaic, as his muse, Luke set out to design a collection of rugs that both recognized the Roman floor's historic pattern and exuded 21st century tastes. What I wanted to do with all the rugs was to make things that people would look at and see the story of how they were made without it being fussy or overdone, Luke said. And he had a plan to do just that. He decided to separate the collection into 2 distinct categories: rhythm and flow. One is more geometric and one is more abstract, Luke explained of his creative decisions. The geometrics are more synonymous with the antique pavement. What you're trying to do is show that inspiration comes from all different places, he continued. He didn't simply want to make a pastiche of Roman mosaics that would be cheap and unoriginal. However, the Deverell rug in his mosaic collection for ABC Home, which is made of silk, is close to an exact replica of the buried floor, as to allow the world to experience the beauty Luke was lucky enough to see in person. Aside from that one rug, the rest of the collection merely sees the Roman flooring as a creative starting point. We are not the British Museum shop. We don't want to replicate, we want to create something new, Luke explained. And the collection didn't stick to just one style. Luke's past collections have boasted elaborate, elegant designs fit for both striking country houses and mosques, but this collection aimed to speak to more modest floors. So what you're balancing are abstract designs and the geometrics, which go in contemporary spaces and work in more traditional environments, Luke detailed. And though the designs pay homage to ancient Roman mosaic tiling, the creation of the rugs relies on Indian weaving. With silk and wool blends and a tedious washing process, which all add to the rug's antique appearance, Luke calls his weaver's methods genius. Part of the adventure of this is that I figured out that the Romans actually made it to India, and there is a trade history between the Romans and the Indians, Luke disclosed. Today, the world continues to interact with Roman history in magnificent ways. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.